Hey everyone, and welcome back to Showbiz Corner. Now in the last couple videos, we've talked about the rise of Showbiz Pizza, the Rock of Fire explosion, and how it all compared to Chuck E. Cheese. But today, we are talking about the moment everything changed. The moment the Rock of Fire explosion started disappearing. Concept unification. Now on paper, concept unification sound harmless. It sounds like one of those boring corporate terms that doesn't really mean anything. But in reality, it was the reason the Rock of Fire explosion was removed, and why Showbiz Pizza basically vanished. So what actually happened? To understand concept unification, we need to go back just a little bit. Because by the mid-1980s, something kind of unexpected had already happened. Showbiz Pizza had won. At least, it looked that way. After the video game crash hit the industry hard, Chuck E. Cheese, also known as Pizza Time Theater, ran into serious financial trouble. They filed for bankruptcy in 1984. And then, in 1985, Showbiz Pizza bought them. Think about that for a second. The company with the Rock of Fire explosion, the one with the more advanced animatronics, now owned its biggest competitor. This should have been the moment where Showbiz doubled down. More Rock of Fire, more innovation, more of what made them special. But instead, they went in a completely different direction. After the merger, the company became Showbiz Pizza Time, Incorporated. And now they had a problem. They weren't running one brand anymore. They were running two different restaurant chains, two different identities, and most importantly, two completely different animatronic systems. On one side, you had the Rock of Fire explosion, highly advanced, complex, expensive, and created by creative engineering. On the other side, you had the Chuck E. Cheese characters, simpler, easier to maintain, and fully controlled by the company. And this is where things started to get tense. The relationship between Showbiz Pizza Time and creative engineering, led by Aaron Fechter, began to break down. Because the Rock of Fire explosion wasn't just some product the company owned outright. Creative engineering still had control over the characters, the technology, and the rights. Which meant, Showbiz Pizza Time couldn't just do whatever they wanted with it. They had to keep paying. They had to keep working with Fechter. And from a corporate perspective, that was a problem. According to Aaron Fechter, the company wanted him to sign over full control of the Rock of Fire explosion. The characters, the technology, everything, so they could produce it themselves, cheaper, and without ongoing royalties. But he refused. He wanted to keep creative control. And honestly, that makes sense. The Rock of Fire was his creation. But that refusal created a deadlock. Because now the company had a choice. Keep working with creative engineering and continue paying for a complex system. Or move to something simpler, cheaper, and fully under their control. And that's where concept unification comes in. In the late 1980s, Showbiz Pizza Time made a decision. They were going to standardize everything. One brand. One set of characters. One system. No more split identity. And that system was going to be Chuck E. Cheese. Concept unification was the process of taking existing Showbiz locations and converting them into Chuck E. Cheese restaurants. But it wasn't just a name change. It was a full transformation. The Rock of Fire explosion stages were removed and replaced with Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. Sometimes, they even reused parts of the Rock of Fire robots, but reskinned them as Chuck E. Cheese characters, which is honestly kind of wild to think about. The same machines, but completely different personalities. This process started around 1990, and over the next few years, it spread across the country. Store by store, stage by stage, the Rock of Fire explosion was disappearing. And for fans, this was brutal. Because it wasn't just a redesign. It was the loss of something unique. The Rock of Fire explosion wasn't safe. It wasn't generic. It was weird. It had attitude. It had personality. And concept unification replaced that with something more controlled, more consistent, but also more corporate. By the early 1990s, the Showbiz Pizza name was basically gone. Most locations had been converted. The Rock of Fire explosion was no longer the star attraction, and Chuck E. Cheese became the face of the entire company. Now, from a business perspective, this worked. It simplified operations, reduced costs, made everything easier to manage, and clearly, it helped the company survive long term, because Chuck E. Cheese is still around today. But from a creative perspective, a lot was lost. The thing that made Showbiz special, the thing that made it stand out, was gone. And that's why concept unification is still talked about today. Not because it was a bad business decision, but because of what it replaced. And here's the interesting part. Even though the Rock of Fire explosion was removed from most locations, it didn't completely disappear. Fans kept it alive. Old show tapes were preserved. Animatronics were saved and restored. And Aaron Fechter himself is still active, still involved, and still connected to the legacy of what he built. So, in a way, concept unification didn't kill the Rock of Fire explosion. It just removed it from the spotlight, because the community never let it die. And that brings us back to the big question. Was concept unification the right move? From a business standpoint? Probably yes. From a fan standpoint? Probably not. But either way, it changed everything. It marked the end of the Showbiz era, and the beginning of something new. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think they made the right decision? Or should the Rock of Fire explosion have stayed? And if you could bring one stage back, which one would it be? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around, because we've got more deep dives, character breakdowns, and Showbiz history coming up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep the Rock of Fire spirit alive.